They put me in the ambulance. They wheeled me out, on a stretcher into the ambulance. As I got to the inside the ambulance, there were three guys there. There was the driver, one guy that was doing all of my vitals, and one guy that was standing in the ambulance, kind of in the back of the ambulance. And they had me strapped down just in case I went to another seizure. So they had me strapped down where I could not move. And the one guy that was taking my vitals, he would take my vitals and everything. He would talk to somebody else. He would talk to a guy that was beside me, and it was as if he was responding to the other guy. And so we started driving. The guy to my left, who was standing, was telling me, he told me to relax, it's gonna be a bumpy ride. And I kind of nodded my head. I didn't say anything. I think I was still in shock, but still I was calm. I wasn't crying at the time then, but he told me to relax, it's gonna be a bumpy ride. And as we were driving and going on different curves, he would actually kind of move back into position. When my body moves, he moved back in position. And so we were going, and he leans over, and he says, "Your wife is behind you with her lights flashing." And mind you, I was still strapped down, so I couldn't sit up to see. And so we get to the ambulance, and I felt fine. I was calm, still a little shaken up, but I was calm. And so we get to the back of the hospital, back to the emergency room. I asked the guy, "Where is the guy that was here with you? I want to thank y'all." And his response was, "What other guy?" And by that time, the driver came around. He said, "You talking about him?" I said, "No, not him." And so I just kind of just sat there. I didn't say anything else. And so he was telling the woman at the back of the hospital all my vitals and things like that. She would type into the computer. And he made a statement. He told her, he seen the thing somebody else was back here with me. And mind you, I know exactly, I knew there was another guy back there. I know it was. And so as we went to my room, my wife was in there, and I asked my wife, I said, "Look, let's look up every illustration, every picture that people have said Jesus looked like." Now, why I said Jesus, I really don't know. But we looked it up. It took about 10, 15 minutes to find a picture, and we found the picture. We actually found a picture of the guy in the ambulance with me. We found that picture.
I was behind him, and he was telling me that it was a third person in there, which was only two at the time, and that person was standing. He told me to look up the pictures, everything what people said Jesus looked like or the angel looked like, and he found the one. He looked like he had a beard. I'm not good at describing, but he had like maybe little curls in his hair, like a goldish color, and yeah, I found it.
He wasn't the typical image that we see it, in our Bibles and and things like that. He wasn't. He didn't have the long beard, the long hair. He had a scruffy beard. It was a neat scruffy beard, and he had like a little fro curly hair. And he wasn't very tall because he was standing up in the ambulance. He was standing up the whole time, and I'm trying to remember, like bluish eyes. I think it was like bluish eyes, and his voice, it wasn't like a booming voice. It was it was a calming voice. It was a very calming voice. And I think that's why I was so relaxed in the ambulance, because it wasn't, it wasn't a panicky voice. It wasn't like an overbearing voice. It was a calming voice. So that night, I'm going to take an MRI, and we went into the MRI room, and as I opened the doors, the same guy was in there. He was just standing there. And he didn't say anything. He was just standing there, and they prepped me for the MRI. Then I got on the little table. He walked up to me. He looked at me, looked down the tube, and then he just kind of backed up. And I didn't say anything. And I was in the tube for about 45 minutes or so. I got out. He wasn't there anymore. After that, I didn't see him again. I know that night, before I'm going to go to sleep, I was going to get on Facebook. My wife was kind of sitting in a chair, and this picture just pops up on my phone. And I would show it to my wife, and I showed it to her. It immediately disappeared. And the picture was the same guy that was in the ambulance with me. It was the same guy we found a picture of earlier that evening. It was the same guy.
He said his battery was dead. So when I got in there, the picture like blanked and then it was dead. And he was like, he just started shaking like that was him. Yeah, that happened too. Yeah.
I went to sleep that night, and to me, it was real. It was real. But I was dreaming, and I do remember talking to one person. Well, another guy. My wife was on the phone with my mom, like in the physical. She's on the phone with my mother, and I asked her about a guy, like an uncle of mine that I never met. I asked him by name. I can't remember what the name was now, but I did ask him by name, and my wife was telling me about all that kind of stuff. So I really can't remember, exactly what it was that was said. But I know it was said that there was an uncle of mine who had passed away like double-digit years ago, that I would have no recollection of him because I never met him.
So when I got there, and I was talking to his mom on the phone, and he was saying, he was saying different names of people, and so he asked his mom. I asked her about a guy who's been dead like 30 years, and she said he was dead long before he was born. Well, that guy had went to prison, for something he didn't do. He got out, and he was doing good for himself. And Will told me to tell his mom, well, he's okay. He also seen my brother who died when he was like 2.5. And he said, well, his hands look like Caleb's. And he said, your brother said, get the family together. At the time, my family had a disagreement going on. And I was like, how can I get them together? These are grown people. I can't make them come. I was like, other than Christmas and Thanksgiving, that's what we'll do. So I began to think about that a little bit, how I'm gonna get them together. And so we formed a prayer line so the family could get together after that. He also said, tell Amanda to write her book. And he gave me the title of the book, Amanda's Eyes.
His little kid, he had he talked like us. He had a strong voice, a adult voice, and he told me to tell my wife to get the family back together, to get their family together, and told him to start writing her book, and he told me to tell her to call it Amanda's Eyes.
And about how old did he look?
3 or 4 years old.
But he was interacting as though he was an adult?
Yes.
Okay. Who did you later learn that to be?
Well, when I told my wife about it, I was telling her about it, and she said there was her brother who had been killed when he was 3 or 4 years old. I couldn't see his face. I just see like from the neck on down. But we were actually having conversation, and I kind of found out that was my wife's brother who, like I said, who was killed at 3 or 4 years old.
And you said you saw him from the neck down. What did you see from the neck up?
From the neck up, it was like everybody's face was distorted, and the way I describe it is like you get in your car and it's raining really hard before you turn your windshield wipers on. Mm-hmm. That's the way it looked. It was just kind of distorted, wiggly lines, just nothing perfect. It was like I said, it looked like rain was coming down. You kind of wipe it away. Okay. There were people in the distance. There was off in the distance, and I couldn't tell you they were male or female. I can tell you how many. There was a lot of people off in the distance, and they were kind of standing there as if they were just waiting for something. It wasn't it wasn't a beautiful sight at all by any means. It was just kind of there. There was nothing spectacular about it. The scenery. There's nothing exciting about the scenery. It was just kind of there, like a dark countryside. Mm-hmm. What looks like the dust dark of a countryside.
Okay. No tunnels, lights.
No tunnel, no lights. No.
Okay. Was there anyone else that you interacted with in that space?
No, it was just a little kid. Just a little kid.
And that was the message for your wife.
Yes.
And get the family
Mm-hmm.
together.
Yes.
Okay. And then what happened? You went ahead and just slept for the rest of the night, or did you wake up?
Um, of course, my wife, I sat up in the bed, and I just had like a warfare with Satan. I mean, I asked her, like, she said, I asked for warfare where I was shaking, like in battle mode. You know, telling him, you're not going to take me. I'm not going anywhere. You know, you picked the wrong person. And I just, that's in kind of battle mode. I don't remember what was all said because I was asleep. But she said I was in straight, double dutch mode, battle mode, ready to go,
Just a fight of your life.
the fight of my life.
And one question Will asked me was, do you think I'm going to die? And I said, because I knew immediately, once he was talking to dead people, that was not a good sign. So I said, no, you're going to live and you're not going to die. You know, God still have work for you to do. And I noticed too his face, his skin, it was dark. His skin. And I'm like, he's not that dark. You know, he's that's not his complexion. So he was also in a position like a baby, like the fetal position. So I knew then something's not right, you know. And he, at this time, no nurse, no doctor, nobody entered that room. All while he was doing, going through this episode. So he also said, he was praying and he was saying Satan, and he was raising up, like he was like, you can't have me, you can't have my body, you can't have my life. And I was trying to wake him up so he won't wake up, so I began to pray with him. So then he lay back down, he leans back, and so he's like, he's calming down, and he goes, look, they're going back in the gate. Like every person that he seen at the time, they was going back. And he got his color back, and he woke up.
Effectual, fervent prayer.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So could you still see the people at that time? Or that was like a different...
As a matter of fact, I think like right before them, everybody that I saw was going into this gate. They were going back into the gate. And the gate was like an old rusted gate, like a rusted type gate. It was really, really big. And they was going back into the gate.
And then at that time you knew everything was going to be okay, or was that, at what moment did you know that the battle was won and that you were going to be okay?
I guess like once I asked her woke up, once I asked her came to and woke up, and I heard my wife praying, and she was kind of telling me what was going on, what was happening. And she said, I asked her if I was going to die. When she said no, she said that's when life came back to me. And like I said, I was asleep, so she said I look really, really dark. And she said no, she said that's when life came back to me. And I think from there I knew I was going to be fine.
Wow. Any other issues since? Any encounters, anything like that?
Well, maybe like 3 weeks later, I had a dream again, and then Jesus came to him again. His exact words were, I showed you my glory. What have you done with it since? He told me that. He told me that. And, prior to that, I didn't do anything. I told people my story, but, I've always tried to be a good person, but now I really, really try to reach out to people now. Because he told me, he said, I showed you my glory. What have you done? And there was just a huge, huge change for me.
Did you get any sense of what he wanted you to do or anything like that?
I think so. We want to be more vocal about him. I've always talked to people. If someone talked to me about him, I'll talk to them. We want to go out and get him. Be more vocal about it, about him. No matter how hard it gets, or rough it gets, or even if it becomes so too easy, still put in the work and give him the glory, no matter what.
What would you say to people that are skeptical or kind of on the fence? Because in Hollywood they make Christians look almost like they're crazy, out of their mind. What would you say to convince someone? If you could witness to someone right now, what would you say?
I would tell them I am crazy. I'm crazy by God. And I used to be those people. I used to be that person too. I didn't believe those type of things either. But if you just open your heart and truly listen, sometimes we be talking to people that they think they should give us an answer or a response. Sometimes just listen. And like with me is like say, if you just listen, you'll get some out of it. Because sometimes some stuff you just can't make up. You just cannot make up. I mean, I don't care how imaginative you are or how big of an imagination you have, you just can't make it up. Not just some people, just listen. Open your heart. Just listen.